If you like this podcast, then consider checking out the other great podcasts at metalsharkstudio.blogspot.com.
Hello, and welcome to the very first episode of Skyrim Addict Academy, a show where we, myself, Bemino, and my friend Michael, intend to educate you fair Tamrielic travellers on the history and lore of the Elder Scrolls series. And where better a place to start than with the actual Elder Scrolls themselves? So without further ado, let's take a look at where and how these Elder Scrolls play a part within the Elder Scrolls series itself. So, of course, starting with the background. Now, the Elder Scrolls are artifacts that archive historical events from the future, past, and present. They are of unknown origin or quantity, and although the cult of the ancestral moth priests and other such establishments have attempted to count and place all of the Elder Scrolls, any attempt to do so would inexplicably cause the number of scrolls in existence to fluctuate. Now, nobody can, according to any in-game sources, the reason for this is completely unfounded. Right. The Elder Scrolls are often related to many bizarre and mystical events that occur within Tamriel. Events such as the Oblivion Crisis and the return of Alduin the Dragon. And once an event that is foretold within an Elder Scroll takes place, it becomes a fixed point in time and will remain forever written within that scroll.
Now, for their appearances in game, now if you were going to find one, say in Skyrim or Oblivion, the Elder Scrolls appear in both games, and within Oblivion, it's actually in a quest. So you're the hero of Kvatch, and let me start over because I just choked. So if you're looking to find an Elder Scroll in game, you can find them both in Oblivion and Skyrim. And within Oblivion, it's actually as part of a quest. As you're the hero of Kvatch, you need to remove the curse of the Grey Fox. And you have to actually impersonate a scholar of the ancestral moths and get into the Imperial Library and take one. The library is housed within the White Gold Tower. It's a massive tower right in the middle of the Imperial City. Pretty hard to miss. And it's said to house numerous Elder Scrolls at that point in time. And they're cared for by the ancestral Moth Priest cult, which of course you see in Skyrim as well. But it seems that they didn't do a fantastic job of this. During the 175th year of the Fourth Era, the Scrolls were mysteriously scattered across Tamriel. In Skyrim, obviously there are three, most notably the Dragon Elder Scroll, which is found in Blackreach, and the Dragonborn, which the Dragonborn. Let me start that over. In Skyrim, obviously the scrolls appear three times. The most notable one is the Dragon Elder Scroll, which is found in Blackreach, which your character, the Dragonborn, is sent there at the bequest of Parthenax, and you use it to send yourself back in time to learn the Dragonborn shout and defeat Alduin to stop the Dragon Crisis that's going on. The Dragon Crisis being the return of Alduin and his intent to wage war against all those who live in Tamriel. Pretty important. That's a pretty important one, considering it stops everything. The others appear during the Dawnguard questline. The first is the Sun Elder Scroll, which is sealed away with Serana. And she is the daughter to Valserina. If I can get her name right.
There's definitely some trouble pronouncing
those names.
Names, yeah. They're very fantasy orientated. Yeah.
The first is the Sun Elder Scroll, which is sealed away with Serana, who you find in Dim Hollow Crypt, and she is the daughter of Valserina. I believe I got that name correctly.
I believe you did, yeah.
The second Elder Scroll to appear during the Dawnguard questline is the Blood Elder Scroll. This one is found in the possession of Valserina herself in the Soul Cairn. Both of the scrolls are needed to complete the Tyranny of the Sun prophecy. Tyranny of the Sun prophecy was created due to an event that took place during the Merovingic era. The Tyranny of the Sun prophecy was created due to an event that took place during
it's Merethic.
Merethic era?
Merethic era, yeah.
Where
Archcurate. I'll leave you to say the tough bits, yeah.
I just defeated this guy, and I don't know how to say his name. Varuther, a victim of terrorism, feeling betrayed by his deity, Ariel. Varuther created the prophecy which would block out the sun for all of eternity. And obviously stopped that with Ariel's bow and killing Harkin.
See, I mean, the reputation that the Elder Scrolls have for being related to all sorts of bizarre and mystical and magical events within the world of Elder Scrolls, it certainly does seem to be ringing true. I mean, the Elder Scrolls obviously thus far have been blamed for the Oblivion Crisis, the Dragon Crisis, and of course almost blotting out the sun. So, I suppose with these Elder Scrolls being in existence and being related to such disastrous events within the world of the Elder Scrolls, I'm pretty sure the inhabitants of Tamriel might be prepared if they could just so happen to read them. But then, reading an Elder Scroll is by no means an easy task. In fact, if any mere mortal were to actually attempt to read an Elder Scroll itself, they would be driven mad and insane. There are, of course, a select few who can read the Elder Scrolls and suffer little consequence. As you probably experienced yourself playing the game, the Dragonborn can read an Elder Scrolls. Like when you select it within the inventory, he whips it out and takes a look. The screen goes a bit blurry and I believe you fall over. But, at least you manage to keep your sanity, and I think when you actually see the Elder Scrolls, it just comes across as a bunch of numbers, star charts. It's hard to actually discern what is going on the actual Elder Scroll itself. Because although you might actually be able to read it, interpreting it is a completely different matter.
Yeah, those who possess impressive prowess may also attempt to read and interpret the Elder Scrolls, yet the cost is will render the reader blind, as we see with the Moth Priest in Dawnguard. I guess it's a fair price to pay for insight.
Yeah, I believe also during the quest for... the quest line that takes place during the Grey Fox quest line in Elder Scrolls Oblivion, you can easily infiltrate the Imperial Tower because many of the Moth Priests there are blind as well. So it does make sneaking in, a little bit easier.
That's true. Most of them are blind. I forgot about that. You're sneaking through the corridors and they can't really see that. But I wonder if their hearing's a little better since they losing sight for reading the Elder Scrolls. And you'd think they would learn their lesson.
You'd think that if they were reading an Elder Scroll that predicted the foretelling of the future, maybe they could have prepared for locked them up a little better. Or
you would hope.
Yeah.
So in order for the ancestral moth priests to read an Elder Scroll, they must conduct a ritual of the Ancestor Moth. It takes place in Ancestor Glade, and the Moth Priest must prepare himself months in advance for the ritual. Once it has been conducted, it can often take the priest many years to interpret the harmony. This harmony is emitted by the moths to populate the ancestral glades. This allows Moth Priests to use the moths as a conduit by which they can interpret the Elder Scroll, whichever one they may be reading at that time. And I believe in Dawnguard, he reads them in order Sun and Blood, or you read them in order Sun and Blood. He reads one and then you read one. Is that what it is?
Do you know, I'm actually going through that quest line for the very first time myself, and I haven't quite reached that section. So I can't actually... Who
reads it. I know he reads one. I think you read one too. I don't know. It's hard to remember. The game blends together after a while.
It's certainly it's great to see that they're actually involved in the Elder Scrolls where you start to see the Elder Scrolls themselves as physical things involved within the game, like more as I suppose more as the game evolves. Like you never really saw them in Morrowind, and you only encounter them once as a side quest in Oblivion. So, and then obviously in Skyrim, it makes up one of the most vital points. And then you see you get two of them on offer in Dawnguard, which was an expansion. So it'll certainly be nice to see because I mean they are very mystical things. I mean there's so much you can play around with them.
Yeah,
you can do to play around with the narrative, yeah.
Yeah, I wonder how they'll figure into the future games as well as into ESO. I'm not sure if they fit into ESO at all. I haven't played it yet because it's not on consoles, but I wonder how they're going to work it into that as well. If they'll work any into that, maybe another one of the scrolls in some way.
Well, since obviously they were. Sorry, at one point they were under lock and key by the Ancestral Moth Priest cult within the Imperial Library, and then obviously they were scattered out into the world of Tamriel. Maybe in future games you might, just accidentally run across them, start picking them up. So I think there's certainly opportunity to see them involved within the game a lot more going on now. Based on what's happened in the lore.
Yeah, they're definitely out in the wild since you're pretty much finding them everywhere in this game. Well, the one in the cairn is in a different world technically. I guess different type of dimension or something since it's in the Soul Cairn.
You could certainly argue that. Yeah, that's true.
The most boring dimension, the Soul Cairn. So there's the one there, and then Blackreach. Yeah. Yes, two are within the Skyrim continent, and the other one's off in some other world. So you wonder what ones are scattered about the other places.
Yeah, I mean, when you take a glance at the old map of Tamriel, there's a lot of opportunity, and obviously when you find these things and you start interpreting the prophecies yourselves, they can change and fluctuate in accounts and. You can never really nail down the Elder Scrolls. They do bring a certain amount of mysticism to a world that is already flooded with fantasy, I suppose.
Yeah, I think it added a lot to Skyrim itself, though, to bring the storyline. Because I mean, it always had the title Elder Scrolls, but
yeah,
until Skyrim, they weren't a huge focus of the game. But I think as they go along, they'll definitely make that more and more. I mean, obviously, dragons were a focus this time, so I don't know if you can do that again. But definitely finding more. I mean, if there's as many as 18 scrolls or whatever there is, that leaves a lot of opportunity for different.
So obviously, in Oblivion, the main focus. Main objective of the game was to stop the Oblivion Crisis.
Yep.
And then, obviously, in Skyrim, the main objective of the game was to stop the Dragon Crisis. So, but do you think maybe in the future games you could see a quest solely around collecting Elder Scrolls, something similar to that, like as the influence of Elder Scrolls in the game increases?
Yeah, I think they have to be part of. I would like them to be a part of whatever main story is going on.
Yeah.
But you don't want to make it feel too similar. Like, oh, okay, we had to use that Elder Scroll to stop the dragons. Now we got to use that Elder Scroll to stop whatever Daedra is doing, whatever. So you don't want to make it too similar, but I definitely like having them in the game. It adds something to it. It's just that story's been told now. The reading of them has been told now. So now next time. When you go to read one, you've kind of already done that. So, do they revisit that, or do they maybe with a next gen console or next gen PC game, you can see a little more in depth of what happens when you read it, which may be interesting. Anyway,
when I was conducting research for our pilot episode of Elder Scrolls, of Skyrim Addicts Academy, discussing the Elder Scrolls, I was thinking of where the game developers and writers may have found influence for involving Elder Scrolls within the game. What is the Elder Scrolls themselves are prophecies written down, yet they are completely unfounded. Nobody can really count them. Nobody really knows what's written on all of them. They could contain any sort of prophecy of any kind. And at one point, the number of Elder Scrolls in existence is constantly in flux, as is their location. And I couldn't really relate such items to anything else that has appeared in other fantasy genres. It definitely, I think, is unique to the Elder Scrolls series. You could possibly relate some sort of similarities to maybe the Rings of Power from Lord of the Rings, but yet, even they're numbered, and what they do. Whereas, I think the Elder Scrolls are unique in the fact that it leaves the door open for so much opportunity to play around with the world.
I wonder if maybe you could go into creating an Elder Scroll in the next game. Where an event
forming your own prophet. Certainly, I've been thinking about this quite a bit, actually. Now, as we record this, it's the height of summer. It is for me at the moment, and the Steam summer sale has just passed us by. I picked up a few titles during the Steam Summer Sale, some other fantasy RPGs, such as Kingdoms of Amalur Reckoning, which I'd never played before.
Oh, I was actually at the release panel for that in San Diego.
Oh, wow.
Actually, the announcement panel, not even the release, 2 years before it came out. And it looked amazing.
It's very enjoyable, but I can't see myself applying so many hours into it as I do Skyrim, because I think the one thing that is pretty much unique to Skyrim is, yes, like these other fantasy worlds, Dragon Age, Kingdoms of Amalur, Witcher, they're all really big, and they've got a lot of content, but yet none of them allow you to craft your own story quite like an Elder Scrolls game does, which is why I think I find myself keep going back to the Elder Scrolls games in particular. And as you say, crafting an Elder Scroll, it really would sort of epitomize that crafting your own tale thing that is the main draw of the Elder Scrolls series, I believe.
Yeah, it would take your character to like a whole new level in say the next game or whatever it may be, where you actually become a part of it, as opposed to you're not acting out, but you're a pawn in the prophecy, as opposed to creating the whole thing itself, the prophecy from beginning to end.
Yeah, that would be that would be quite epic, I suppose. Like, even though the epics, the narratives that we've encountered thus far in the series have also been epic, that would be quite the pinnacle, I believe.
Oh yeah. Or even going back and seeing how one was created may be interesting.
I think the ability to obviously the Elder Scroll that you encounter within Skyrim, which transports you back to the throat of the world, where I can't remember the name of the characters now, but there's the three Dragonborns, and they're attempting to bring down Alduin. So obviously they're already sort of starting to play with time travel. If that's something else that the Elder Scrolls introduce into further games in the series, that'll be definitely an interesting element to play, because I think between Elder Scrolls Online, which is set years before all of the previous games, right up to Skyrim now, they have developed, I say they now, but Bethesda themselves have developed a vast timeline that they can start to play around with. And
definitely.
Sorry.
It's definitely like widened or expand it the amount of time that they're covering and what's going on. So I guess the more we learn as ESO goes on as well will help. I'm not sure how deep into like scrolls and lore that game is going to get or not.
Yeah, and like with particularly the Blood and Sun Elder Scrolls, we're starting to see what they've done there is something that was formed way back extremely early in the Elder Scrolls timeline during the Merethic era, which is before the third era where the Oblivion game takes place, and well before the fourth era. We're starting to see the events of that, which spilling over into Skyrim and I suppose you could say typically say the present day through the Tyranny of the Sun prophecy.
Yeah, because if you count that as, say, present game day, anyway. Yeah, it's amazing the amount of time that from the time that those scrolls were formed, those prophecies were formed, and the time they came to fruition is, I don't know what you would put it in regular time, but say thousands of years or whatever, or hundreds of years. It's from their forming until they were used to stop whatever crisis they foresaw.
So the Elder Scrolls, such as the Tyranny of the Sun, the Tyranny of the Sun prophecy, are the Elder Scrolls themselves are unique to connecting both the past and the present. So, yeah, like if in future titles in the Elder Scrolls series, you could start sort of jumping around different time periods due to these Elder Scrolls. Like we've already seen going back in time to learn the Dragon Wrench out atop the throat of the world. Maybe also going back in time and seeing how during the Tyranny of the Sun prophecy, the Snow Elves were massacred by the Dwemer and the automatons, which eventually forced them to become the Falmer.
Yeah.
Seeing events like that would, sort of really sort of establish the lore and the setting of the Elder Scrolls world.
Oh, what if you came across a scroll that would allow you to see the Dwemer cities in action? Or one that foretold what happened to them, but I think the Elder Scrolls themselves sort of offer up kind of like doorways into the past and the present and possibly even the future of the Elder Scrolls world from the actual situation in which the game is taking place at the time. So it's certainly like a nice kind of gameplay element there, I think. Like you say, like going back and seeing... Because, I mean, there's so much of the world that is only ever really slightly touched upon in the games that you experience, that you could just delve in and go back more. Like races like the Falmer, the Dwemer, and then obviously in Oblivion you have like the Iliad ruins. Obviously there is so much backstory to delve into, and the Elder Scrolls themselves, I think, offer up the perfect opportunity to do so. Even if you because game-wise they tend to always go forward in time, but even if you got a glimpse of what it was like as things were functional and working, as the societies were there, like before the Falmer were enslaved or sent underground and all that, like just to see, get a quest line where you get to see what's going on in the Dwemer cities before everything falls and everything goes down. That would be amazing. Or even the Iliad ruins or whatever land they happen to be in, whatever the backstory of that land is, the ancient artifacts of that land are, going back and seeing them in their, full glory or whatever. That would be pretty interesting. I mean, I don't see them pulling the whole game back in time, but
just sort of like small bites.
To find information or to see, to learn something in order to move a certain story forward. That would be pretty amazing to do.
And I suppose, obviously, speaking of the Dwemer, trying to get things back on education tracks wise, I suppose we can inform you a little bit more about how to read an Elder Scrolls, because as we touched upon previously, now if you have prescient prowess, you can just try and interpret an Elder Scrolls, and if you're fortunate enough to be a Dragonborn, you can take a glance at the one without becoming insane or mad or losing your eyesight. And the ancestral moth priests have the obviously what is it called? The ritual of the ancestor moth which they use to read an Elder Scrolls. But the Dwemer also developed a way for us mere mortals to be able to read an Elder Scroll without going blind, mad, or insane. Because using a machine called a lexicon, which you actually do use during the main quest line within the game Skyrim, this allows the reader, through a series of mechanical lenses and the lexicon itself, to interpret an Elder Scroll, which probably would have helped poor old Septimus Signus, who is a person who attempted to read an Elder Scroll without using any precautionary methods, such as the ritual of the ancestor moth or a lexicon. And as you may have encountered in-game, poor old Septimus Signus was driven both mad and insane. Although he was still able to produce the popular commentary on the Elder Scrolls called The Rumination of the Elder Scrolls.
Yeah, Septimus, he went crazy. Then he conjured up or he was used by Hermaeus Mora, basically. And I wonder if he was used because he was so out of it at that point.
It's always for those of you who may not have encountered that quest line yet, it's definitely one of the weirder points within an Elder Scrolls game that I've so far encountered, yeah.
Yeah, it definitely is. The Hermaeus Mora character is different, we'll say. And it's always good going into Blackreach, so that's always a good one.
So obviously, the Elder Scrolls themselves are known within the game world by its occupants, and they impact heavily upon the world of the Elder Scrolls, which does bring up quite a few mixed feelings, really. Obviously, I think many of the members, such as the College of Winterhold, people who possess strong magical prowess and, I suppose, a higher sense of learning, not just your base-born orc barbarian, but those who seek to unravel the mysteries of the Elder Scrolls within the game world, well, they generally regard the Elder Scrolls with a sense of high esteem and mysticism. They are sacred documents, things to be treasured, things to be sought after. I believe Urag Groshub, who is the librarian at the College of Winterhold, describes them as all is true about the Elder Scrolls now. All is true, even the falsehoods they foretell, especially those falsehoods. But then, also now, there is some negative opinions towards the Elder Scrolls. The Greybeards consider them to be an extreme blasphemy. And Parthenax himself isn't all too trusting of the Elder Scrolls. So, it is hard to, I think, understand just as to whether the Elder Scrolls themselves are a good thing or a bad thing within the world. I think many of the occupants might believe themselves to be better off were they not to exist.
Yeah, especially not knowing the creation of them. I mean, how do you know what to trust? What they were born from? Where they came from? why they were created, without knowing any of those things, how can you completely trust it? Yeah, I guess that's kind of
there is I think, definitely a strong sense of like the fear of the unknown surrounding them.
Yeah, because I mean, they could have been created for. Well, I mean, each could have been created for many different reasons, but without knowing who created these or what they were born from, it really. I can see why Parthenax, and although I'm not a huge fan of the Greybeards, I can see why. They're both questioning them, to say. And possibly Parthenax, I mean, he may have knowledge that nobody else has, being around so long.
I think I believe the dragons are quite unique, whereas when it comes to... the dragons are rather unique when it comes to Elder Scrolls, because they're actually immune. Well, I say immune, but they're not affected by, well, I suppose, the effects of an Elder Scroll.
So they could actually theoretically read it and not go crazy like Septimus. Or blind like people in the game.
Indeed, yeah.
I wonder how that would physically work. How would they actually read? I wonder. Has Alduin or Parthenax or any of the old elder dragons? I wonder if they have ever actually. I don't know how they would possibly read an Elder Scroll, but had somebody read it or open it for them to read or whatever. However physically that would happen.
Well, being as not all is known about the Elder Scrolls. Maybe they exist in forms other than actual scrolls themselves. Like
that's true. It could
be written in the stars. I mean, often the Elder Scrolls themselves depict star maps and star charts and all manner of things. So there could be multiple ways of interpreting Elder Scrolls, I presume.
That could just be the human form, or the accessible human form they take, or the ones that were created for not human, but human-like prophecies, whatever the character may be.
Indeed, yeah. So the Elder Scrolls that foretell prophecies that would affect the humans appear in a human form. Yeah, I see. I agree with your chain of thought there. Yeah.
Because then the dragons would obviously have a different, maybe more written in the stars or something grander like that they would be involved in.
It's, I think, it's certainly interesting to see, to chart how the opinion of the Elder Scrolls changed between both Oblivion and Skyrim. Possibly owing to the facts that took place in between the two games. Because in the Elder Scrolls Oblivion, we see the Elder Scrolls being cherished, well, cared for, looked after. They're housed relatively safely, but by a bunch of blind ancestral moth priests. Although it does seem all too easy to steal the odd one or two here. Whereas when the time comes to Skyrim, obviously after they're scattered to the winds, it seems that nobody's really seeking them out. In fact, the places where you find them within the game Skyrim itself is within Blackreach, an ancient Dwemer city that nobody's touched for thousands of years. And the other one, Blood and the Sun, are found within crypts and tombs that again have also been untouched for thousands of years. So it seems that by the time we get to Skyrim, no one seems to be actively trying to interpret Elder Scrolls. possibly owing to the fact that they were scattered to the wind themselves, and obviously such a mysterious event may begin to... You may start to look upon Elder Scrolls themselves with a sense of fear rather than a sense of awe and power. Like, they could be things to, I suppose, avoid, to fear, possibly to know your future is, well, to be driven mad, as Septimus Cygnus certainly was.
And I wonder what kind of event took place where they were scattered in that way.
There isn't a whole lot to be found within the game that offers information on this. It simply says that the Elder Scrolls during the third era of the Elder Scrolls were scattered to the wind.
Wonder if that was for safety, or if wonder if that'll be a possible quest line / storyline in future. Why did they have to be scattered? Was it to protect them, or to protect the prophecies, or to protect whatever was going on at that time, or stop someone else from getting them? Stop, who knows? One of the Daedra, possibly. Who knows?
It's it certainly does present, I suppose, an interesting opportunity as far as Bethesda themselves are concerned when it comes to creating new content and narratives for the further games, because rather than, I suppose, reiterating and simply reproducing same old content, same old boring kind of storylines that you often get in other game series, not to name names, but like the Elder Scrolls themselves, I think offer a lot of opportunity to explore a vast array of narratives without having to, there's so much lore and backstory already open up to them to create new narratives that they don't have to go through a special effort to drag anything or extend anything too awkwardly, I suppose.
Yeah, that's true. There's so much, they've left themselves so much story to use, with all just the bulk of lore and the gaps, and even the gaps in the lore that they leave, I'm assuming purposely, because that way they can fill them in. It gives them so much fodder to use going forward in even though each game is, has its enclosed story, the doors it opens up, even closing the doors in the game, the other doors it opens up for story-wise is immense. I mean, just the amount of lore and the way they handle it is, it's incredible the way they handle it. I mean, there's probably more lore than in the Lord of the Rings somehow, because of the time frame and the amount of people involved in creating it.
And I mean, not to stray too far beyond the point now, but everything that you encounter in the game seems to have another step beyond it. Like, you pick up a book that tells a story that introduces new characters, and then you possibly do a little bit more research into the character, and it opens up a whole different world. And like the quests and the storylines that are on offer within the games only ever really touch briefly upon everything that is fully there, I think.
Yeah, you're only getting a touch of each thing. Yeah, you feel you're getting a full story, but then there's so much more to that story than even what you're getting. You feel like you're getting a full story, but then when you look at it a little closer, there's so much more background to everything, especially the Elder Scrolls part of it.
Definitely. Well, I think let's just sort of offer up a brief recap on hopefully everything that we've managed to teach you today about Elder Scrolls. Okay, so the Elder Scrolls themselves were housed within the Imperial Library at the White Gold Tower in the Imperial City, which can be found in the game Oblivion. Even though they were tried to be counted by the cult of the ancestral moth priests as I'm gonna struggle to pronounce this one now. Quintus Novellus, I think I did it right there. Quintus Novellus, as it recounts in his book An Accounting of the Scrolls, Quintus Novellus actually tried to count the Elder Scrolls after one just so happened to go missing from the library. But he found that any attempt to do so would cause the number of Elder Scrolls to fluctuate, and obviously their location to fluctuate. They simply do not exist in a countable form, as Quintus Novellus puts it. The Elder Scrolls themselves are bound to mystical events within the Elder Scrolls series, such as the Oblivion Crisis and the Dragon Crisis. Any event that takes place that has been written within an Elder Scroll becomes a fixed point in time and reality. You can actually find physical Elder Scrolls within the games, both Oblivion and Skyrim, where you can visit the Imperial City and take as many as you'd like, I believe, from the Imperial Library. In Skyrim, you use an Elder Scroll to travel back in time to learn the Shout of the Dragon Ren to defeat Alduin. And also, the Elder Scrolls are used to stop the tyranny of the Sun prophecy during the Dawnguard questline. When it comes to reading an Elder Scroll, you either have to use the Dwemer lexicon technology or the Ancestral Moth Priest's the ritual of the Ancestor Moth to read an Elder Scroll. Although if you're also the Dragonborn can read one without fearing too many consequences. And generally, overall, of the inhabitants of the world of Tamriel, there are mixed feelings towards the Elder Scrolls. Some, the cult of the Ancestral Moths in particular, regard them with much high esteem and mysticism, whereas there are rather more skeptical, those who are skeptics, such as the Greybeards. It's quite interesting because I think both organizations do bear many similarities. You know, they're both a bunch of old guys who like to sit around and ruminate over the old documents.
Yeah, that is a good point.
So, well, I think obviously there is an awful lot more to the Elder Scrolls, but I think with the Skyrim Addicts Academy, we'd like to be able to teach you as much of the Elder Scroll lore as possible. So we're going to briefly touch upon topics, but I don't think not go in too depth, because we'd never make it out of anywhere within our lifetimes, I suppose, because as we previously mentioned, there is an awful lot of Elder Scrolls lore to touch upon. But hopefully we've managed to give you a brief rundown and understanding of the Elder Scrolls themselves. Something which I hope does fulfill your game time just a little bit more, as you know more about what you're actually dealing with. I suppose any...
Let's see. Elder Scrolls, good or bad? I'm not sure. Yeah, it's definitely, I believe they definitely added to the game, to the more recent games, and giving it a more larger feel and feeling connected to each other. Even though the stories may be different, they're connected in the way that with that part of the lore. So it's I hope they use them going forward sparingly, like they have so far, because it keeps the intrigue. Where if you know too much, then they'll kind of lose that.
Behind, I suppose, the hidden curtain, really, isn't it? It's
yeah.
a magician never reveals his tricks.
Exactly. It's like when you see the Wizard of Oz.
Coin a terrible pun of phrase there, yeah.
When the Toto pulls the curtain back, it's not as fun as before.
I certainly agree, yes. I mean, I think they definitely, as they've been introduced into the later games, they've certainly added, I suppose... I think as the Elder Scrolls themselves are introduced into the game, you kind of start to view the game world as though there's definitely more than one realm to be perceived. It certainly adds that, I kind of suppose, kind of sense of... like, even though we obviously you've been to the realms of Oblivion, you've seen the Daedric Lords and whatnot, it starts to make you think. I suppose you look up into that Skyrim sky, and you see more than just the stars once you've interpreted the Elder Scrolls. You start thinking beyond just the normal realms of reality, the Elder Scrolls.
Definitely. Well said.
Thank you very much. Well, I think there's just one more thing to do, and that is to thank all of those who put some simply fantastic amount of work and content onto the Elder Scrolls Wiki and the unofficial Elder Scrolls pages, and of course the Imperial Library. So we'd just like to thank all of those for providing us with the references and resources in order to educate you for the Skyrim Addicts Academy. And of course, I strongly recommend that we intend to do this. Well, I intend to do this as often as possible. Hopefully, on a weekly basis. So I strongly recommend you tune in next week to learn more about the Elder Scrolls lore. And of course, we'd strongly appreciate any suggestions or listener feedback you have for us. If there's any particular topics you'd like us to cover in further episodes of Skyrim Addicts Academy, then please send them our way through either the Facebook page, the Twitter account, or is there an email address that they can get hold of us at?
SkyrimadicPodcast@gmail.com, and just put, I don't know, lore or academy in the header there. Or the title, I should say.
Well, I think time to sign off, I suppose, and hit the books and start scrubbing up on some more Elder Scrolls lore so we have more to bring you next week. Thanks very much for joining us, guys.
Bye.
Hey there, folks, just chiming in on the end here now to give you just a little note now. Thanks for listening to the episode of Skyrim Addicts Academy. It was a little bit tough going. I'm not sure how well this format is going to work. I'm doing, like I've said previously in the episode, I do intend to keep it going weekly. I think from now on we're going to have more of a structured format. The Elder Scrolls itself was just kind of like a sort of a test bed, I suppose, to see how well the episodes would work. But moving on further into the series, I intend to look at certain aspects of the Elder Scrolls lore. I'm going to be starting with the geography, I suppose you could say. And in the next episode, we'll be taking a look at Tamriel itself. And then obviously moving further on into the regions that populate Tamriel. Certainly the ones that have featured heavily in the games themselves. You know, Skyrim, Cyrodiil, Morrowind. So please do tune in next week, where I'll be bringing you more Skyrim Addict Academy.
Metal Shark Studio.